Now, you just launched your own company, Coast to Coast Strategies, and I want to get into that in a second. But first, you spent so many years with the state party as chairman. What's been the biggest? I mean, what's been the adjustment period for you, stepping away from that, and now you're not in that official capacity and you're doing your own thing? I mean, what's that been like? What do you miss the most? Is it those weekly chats with Mark Brewer?
Well, you know, I miss the people. I mean, it is a very different perspective. I mean, I went from, on average, over 300 emails a day, probably 20 or 30, you know, actually completed phone calls a day that I returned or talked to people, traveling 5 to 7 days a week and speaking to different groups and everything else. I went from being constantly on the road and constantly being in front of and with other people to, you know, working back here in the office, and literally I think my emails dropped. I actually did a post once when it dropped under 50 a day, and I was just shocked that I could actually do that. And now it's probably averaging somewhere around there, but it really has changed the way I act on a day-to-day basis. So I'd have to say the interaction with party activists is what I miss. Being on the front line all the time and having to, you know, pay attention. You know, I mean, obviously, I don't have to do all the clippings and read all the papers I did every morning. I mean, I keep in touch now, but it's a much more peripheral view of things. I look at the headlines. I don't necessarily have to read as much. I don't get into the details. I'm not following the budget the way I used to. I scan MERS rather than read MERS. So, I mean, there are different things that you had to do on a day-to-day basis as chairman to be prepared to do the things that we did at the party level. But at the same time, it's been really, you know, I mean, there's a lot of good things. I mean, I'm packing for Boy Scout camp today, and we're going to set up the kids' camp this weekend, and my boys are all going to camp for a week. And so, you know, I'm spending more time with the family. I actually get to sit at home and have dinner with the kids and, you know, do things with my wife. So it is a little bit different in that regard, and that's some of the good parts. Some of the bad parts is, you know, I'm kind of a type A personality. So I enjoyed, you know, being with people, and I enjoyed being out there all the time.
You're filling part of that void with Coast to Coast. You're working with Newt Gingrich. You're all over the state and all over the country still. What's Coast to Coast all about?
Well, my idea was Coast to Coast Strategies was basically a consulting firm where I wanted to take advantage of my contacts and my knowledge of the political process to help others accomplish their goals. I didn't really want to lobby, so I didn't want to get into lobbying. I don't necessarily, since I'm kind of getting out of the political realm directly kind of as a one-on-one thing, I don't want to be a political consultant, but I'm doing like strategic planning and business development for people. So I'm opening up my Rolodex and hooking people up from a business perspective, and then also kind of strategically, like for instance with Newt Gingrich, I'm working with American Solutions and Newt to fight the card check legislation. And so we have set up in the 12 key states where there are swing senators that are either up for re-election next time around or happen to be in right-to-work states. We're setting up a program to, you know, keep the pressure up on them and educate them on the issues, educate their constituents on the issues, and make sure, or at least encourage them not to vote for, you know, this EFCA legislation that is basically just putting more money in union bosses' pockets. So that's kind of an example of a you know, of a project I'm working on. On the business development front, I've hooked up with several software companies that are offering products to political campaigns, to state parties, to companies to help manage grassroots, grass tops organizations. We've got one thing called the RAP Index, which basically identifies, you know, people's employees and suppliers and how they could help in getting kind of legislation passed or getting involved in the political process on behalf of a company or on behalf of an issue. So I'm doing that kind of work that keeps me politically connected but yet not directly involved. And then I'm also working on some foundation stuff. I'm going to be working on the new Centurion program, which obviously was very successful here in Michigan. We're expanding it to several of the states. So I'm going to help with that program. We're putting on a dinner series in Washington to kind of actually help affect public policy and give our new Centurions a role to play there and a place for our donors to see how the work and the money they invested here actually works. We're working with several other states to set up kind of almost a franchise organization. I mean, the program is here, it works. All you have to do is transfer it into Indiana and you can make the same thing work there. So I'm very excited about that. And then, you know, I'm also working with another one of Newt Gingrich's kind of not direct organizations, but some others that are people who are associated with Newt who are putting together some kind of you know, conservative think tank, conservative activist organizations. We're trying to get more young people involved, more Hispanics involved in the party. So there's some angles that we can play there, and I think I can be helpful in those regards. So I'm doing that as well.
some of that time in Washington. You've been named to a new rules committee that's looking at the GOP presidential primary schedule. I know you guys just met this past Monday, and what was discussed there is, I guess the big question is there any chance that Michigan can move up in that process and have a more important role in the 2011-2012 presidential process?
Well, possibly. I mean, and I think that's what we're going to discuss. I mean, basically everything's on the table. The idea is that we spent 2 years trying to see whether or not we can come up with a better timetable, some type of rotational system. Some people wanted to avoid a national primary. Other people think a national primary is a good idea. Some people want to close the system versus having an open system. You know, the Democrats only allow Democrats to vote in their process. We actually have an open system that state by state we can decide whether we allow Democrats, independents, and Republicans to nominate our candidates. So what Chairman Steele has asked us to do is to basically put together a lot of different options. He's going to chair this committee. There were 13 of us from around the country appointed to the committee, plus the chairman and the legal counsel. And what we're looking at is all the previous plans that were proposed. We're taking a look at what the benefits and detriments would be to setting up any kind of timetable. Is it realistic? Is it doable? We're going to have actually at the RNC meeting in July in San Diego our first public hearing, and we're going to poll the 168 members of the RNC and see what all the 50 states think and what kind of reaction they have, what kind of suggestions they might have. So this is going to be a very long process. I don't think there's any predisposition as to where it's going to end up. I think that the chairman would like to see us kind of review this in a very broad way and hopefully come up with an answer to what some of the concerns are. You know, realistically, I think we can address some of the problems. Whether we can address them all will be a very difficult process because we do need to ultimately get consensus to make this work. We need 2/3 of the committee to agree to it. So this is not going to be an easy thing to accomplish.
So if folks want to get a hold of Coast to Coast, they want to get a hold of you, they want to get you involved in different things, how can they get a hold of you?
Well, the easiest thing is, you know, my email is, all my emails are sanuzis@gmail.com or sanuzis@me.com, which is a Mac address. I still have I created a new blog site that's called That's Saul Folks. So literally it's just www.thatsaulfolks.com. You can see me there, and I'm on Twitter and Facebook and LinkedIn, so it's pretty easy to find me. If you just Google me on the internet, you'll get a hold of me, and you'll also be able to see what I'm doing because I'm still updating every day, and I Twitter and update my Facebook and LinkedIn on a regular basis.
We appreciate it. Thanks, Saul.
Thanks for having me. Great.